Hi, and welcome to a small, medium at large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Heisen, bringing you intimate stories that heal. I want to thank all you listeners for subscribing, sharing, and definitely for sending us your incredible comments. I've been enjoying reading everything, and as of today, I've answered all the questions that have come in. So I try to keep up, and I look forward to getting more questions and comments from you. I do want to say that I'm never sure who our guest is going to be because we find guests by meeting people in other shows. So today we have a wonderful guest coming to us that I'm going to tell you about named Jill Lowy. Jill Lowy was born in Illinois and grew up in a family spending a lot of time camping and becoming close with nature. She found people would quite naturally talk to her about their problems, and she was a good listener, which led her to obtaining a master's degree in counseling. She worked as a counselor for the state of Colorado for many years. Jill had a spiritual epiphany while reading Be Here Now by Ram Dass, and it changed her life in her early 20s. Jill underwent initiation with Hermetics, Kriya Yoga, and mysticism at Lotus Temple in Chicago. She also began practicing Tai Chi and Qigong. Jill began to teach Tai Chi and meditation in her 30s and moved to Vermont and lived off the grid on 100 acres of land. Jill became involved with the practice of Tantra with a small circle of friends, and she's led a small pagan circle where she practiced magical rituals and worshiped in nature. In her late 50s, she moved to Colorado and studied Buddhism in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh. Jill began Tai Chi at Mayu Sanctuary, where she met Sean McNamara, and she studied remote viewing, psychokinesis, and lucid dreaming. Jill has published her new book, 10 Ways to Create Good Karma and Challenges on the Spiritual Path. Let's welcome Jill here today. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Gail. So good to see you.
It's very good to see you in person, or well, virtually.
Virtually.
Very happy to have you here today. I always like to try and tell our audience how we kind of found the guests that we have today. And some of the guests are people that have reached out to me, and that's my experience here with Jill. I received just all of a sudden a book in the mail. I didn't know where it came from. And it had a really lovely note from this woman, Jill, saying, I just felt there was a little bird told me I should send you this book. And I was so pleased that she reached out to me from hearing me on some shows. And that's how we became guests today, to be able to speak and share her stories. I just completed her book, and I'm looking forward to talking today all about karma with her, because she's done a fabulous book with techniques at the end of things to look at in your life to help you go through the different things you might be trying to solve. But we'll get through that as we start from the beginning of the book. I'd like to know, so what is karma and how does it work in our life? Can you explain that to our listeners today? Some listeners may be very completely understanding of all of this information. Some may be hearing this for the first time.
Sure. Basically, most people are confused and have a lot of misconceptions as to what karma is. I mean, if you talk to people on the street, they go, "Oh, karma's a bitch. Don't do that," you know. And so they have this idea that karma is like rewards and punishment, and that it's going to punish you if you do something wrong. And so that's what most people have, that kind of view on karma. And karma is not like that at all. Karma basically means action, it means deed or work, and it's basically the law of cause and effect. It's a simple law of cause and effect that what you put in is what you're going to get back, is what comes back to you. Just like in the Bible saying, as you sow, so shall you reap. That's the idea of karma. And so karma is not some destructive force or punishing force looking out to hurt people, and it's a way for people to learn from their actions of that their actions have consequences to what they do,
Hmm.
so that they can learn from their actions and be better people. And so, if you can do positive actions, then you'll have positive effects in your life. And if you have, consequently, if you have negative actions, that's going to bring about negative effects in your life. It's almost like a metaphysical law, and so, that's basically what karma is. And um,
Yeah, people often would say things like, you don't want to do that because the karma is going to come back at you. And you're
exactly.
saying, what you're saying is really that that's not the way it actually works.
No, it doesn't. It's like, when you, it's based on your intention. Um, and if you do an action, if you do virtuous actions, good actions, then you'll have good effects from those actions. Will come back to you. And so, and conversely, if you do, um, wrong actions, terrible actions, that's going to bring bad karma back to you. So it's almost a law of justice in a way. The justice comes back to you as you put that. It's putting out energy. You're putting out energy of a certain kind of, and it's turning into, and it's an action that you do as a result of that energy and intention. And if that action is a positive action, then it's going to bring a positive effect to your life. And if it's a negative action, it's going to bring a negative effect.
Can you,
Yogis like to look at it, more as, a positive in terms of the expansion response and a constrictive response. If you put out negative karma, it's very constricting, and it'll be constricting your life. If you put out positive karma, it's more expansive, and it will bring expansion, into your life. So,
can you share like one positive and one negative, either your personal story of a karma thing as an example, so that our listeners can understand, a situation they might find themselves in also, one that created positive, one that was negative, but
oh,
we know
sure,
that
sure.
we're not judging them.
There's a zillion of them. And
Right, I
that,
read some good ones in your book, so I was hoping you could share some.
um, well, it just, some things come off to mind. Like, just say like you're, um, in a grocery store, for instance, because everybody goes to grocery stores.
Right.
And this can relate to everybody. So you're in a grocery store, you're waiting in line at a grocery store, and, you're in a hurry, and the line, um, is kind of long, and you've got an appointment coming up. So you're getting a little frustrated because the line's not moving fast enough. And then a woman is there, and this happens all the time. A woman is there, has all these coupons. And so she's doling out all these coupons,
That would be me.
and so the person who wants to get through the line is getting angry. They're getting angry because, the line's not moving. They got an appointment that they have to make, and they get angry at this woman, who has done nothing to them, but they'll get angry at that woman because she's holding up the line, and she's making everybody, um, take longer to wait for to get through, with their purchases. And so this person could do two things. He could do, or she could do, positive karma, just saying, with an understanding that, well, this is how things go, and have patience, and sometimes, um, uh, things take a while, and things don't always go right, and so it doesn't disturb you. And in fact, you could even make it more positive by feeling compassion for the woman, because maybe she's having financial hardships and needs to use coupons, and that would be a positive effect. Now, if you got angry at the woman and sent anger her way, and start yelling at her, why did you have to bring those stupid coupons? Don't you see there's a whole line wait, and send out that kind of angry energy at her, that'll bring about negative karma because you're sending negative energy to her, and it could it could ruin her day, or could make her very angry, and but um, um, in that situation, you might have and done something like that. And it's the same thing that every day we go through. People drive on a highway on the road. I mean, look at the road rage that
I've
happens
seen a
these
lot
days.
of it lately, and I have to say, when it happens and and I'm in it, I get the energy right away. I'm like a sponge, and all of a sudden I'm like, and then I'm like, wait, what? Why am I upset now? Because this person just threw out all this negative energy towards me, and
Exactly.
I didn't diffuse it or make it not enter into my space because it just sort of happens as you're driving on the road,
Sure.
and it's not good to be in that state of mind when you're driving because you want to stay in a positive, clear headspace while you're out there on the road.
For
And so
sure.
I try, I'm saying all these different little things, they sound small, but if we try them in our life and we can cut some of that out, it really is better. And I did have that the other day where I was getting frustrated exactly about something like this, somebody in a line. And then I said, wait a minute, remember what those last few talks you've had with people about just taking a few breaths and remembering that this is meaningless, what's going on here. You don't need to involve yourself into getting all upset over something that's really going to change and not matter in the future anyway.
For
But it's
sure.
our culture too, because we live in a place where, making money and getting there and getting success, this is all our, instead of accepting that maybe this woman needs this time and everything will work out fine. It's hard to feel that way when you're being rushed or you're going back to your job or you have a short lunch break or the things that people have to deal with.
Yeah,
So
every day we have all these situations that we constantly have to deal with them. And so it's important to pay attention to see if you're being reactive, which negatively reacting to a situation instead of learning how to respond to a situation. Reacting is a condition that where you respond to a situation negatively. It's something that you might have learned growing up. Maybe your parents responded um, badly to when someone acted a certain way, or but you learn these responses. You could learn growing up in school how other children treated other children who might have been a little different from them. So these are conditioned responses. These conditioned responses are karma, and that's the karma that can come to the foreground in a situation that can result in negative things like road rage or anger and frustration and tension, and blowing a situation way out of proportion when it didn't really need to happen. I mean, what happens, every day um, we have to uh, drive to work, and all of a sudden there's a traffic jam. Oh my God, I'm going to be late for work. The boss is expecting me to be there on time. If I'm not there on time, I might lose my job. If I lose my job, then how am I going to feed my kids? And these kinds of responses and thoughts go through your head. And the thing is it's all reactive, and it's all stories in your head. None of them are real. They're just expectations of a future event. None of them are real. The situation that you're involved with is you're in a traffic jam. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't drive your car over the top of all those cars, even though we would like to. That would be really nice. But we're stuck in a situation, and you can either react negatively, like, darn it, I'm stuck and I have to get to work and I have to do this and I have to do this, and get yourself all worked up, stress yourself out maximally. All of it not necessary, because you're still going to be in that traffic jam no matter what. So you can either take the situation as it is. It's a phenomenon that's happening to you, to happening if you're in that traffic jam. And you can deal with it patiently, maybe sitting back, listening to some music, do some meditation while you're sitting there. Go out and do a Mexican hat dance. That's and I've actually done that. And turn it into something that's positive instead of creating a lot of negative karma by reacting negatively due to conditioned responses
I have to say, when I fall into that, it's kind of a spiral of that kind of thing, and you're kind of repeating the things in your head, and you're in the negative space.
right.
When that catches me off guard and I'm falling into that, I notice everything else around me starts becoming, that's when I'm dropping something. That's when I stub my toe, or I mean, there's other things that seem to follow through while that negativity is all floating around. So to be able to know some techniques or things you might be able to share on when you're finding yourself in that situation, like taking a few breaths, doing a little meditation, maybe thinking something positive to change the negative thoughts. These are all good, helpful tools, but it's almost like you forget in that second when you get caught up in the whirlwind because it's such a conditioning.
It is such a conditioning, and that happens. And that happens to me, like just what you were saying, Gail. It's like sometimes when I get angry at some little thing, I'll notice the things around me. I'll start bumping into things, or I'll knock something over. And it's funny how it carries on to other things. And so I notice that happening, and that's an indication for me to slow down, pause. So one of the things that people can do is practicing being mindful. It's called mindfulness.
Yes, in fact, that was my question number 4. So
Oh,
we'll jump over my other 2, but we'll get back to them. And I was wondering if you could share what the practice of mindfulness is and what that word means.
sure. Yeah, mindfulness is a great practice. It's taught by many different folks have made it popular. Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist, Zen Buddhist monk, very famous. He passed away recently, but he's well known for putting mindfulness in the foreground through his Miracle of Mindfulness book. That has changed a lot of people's lives. And then there's also John Kabat-Zinn. He's done a lot of work, more from a scientific perspective, on the benefits of mindfulness in terms of helping you to be more relaxed and not get caught up in the stress of the situation and causing painful responses from that. And there's also Eckhart Tolle. He also talks a lot about mindfulness, kind of in a different way through his ideas on presence.
Well,
But mindfulness, huh?
at this time in life, when there's been so much stress with COVID and people being confined in their houses and having to spend 24/7 with some family members, things like this, it seems like a practice of mindfulness right now would be a really great time to start trying to see the effects of this, because this is a time, I mean, we need this all the time, but I think we need it even more than ever right now.
Correct, definitely. Because mindfulness is trying to focus on being in the present moment, in the here and the now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that that help you to be in the present moment is focusing on your breath and focusing on the sensations in your body. These are the kinds of things that can help you stay in the present moment, because there's a tendency always to be mindlessness, and that is to go off in your head in terms of what things could go wrong, what things be worrying about the future. So like in the pandemic that you brought up, it's like all the worries that go through your mind of what might happen. And so you're concerned, of course, that you're going to get sick and you're going to get ill, and your friends and your family. And those are all things that, of course, that aren't happening. It's only happening in your mind. It's only an expectation of a possible future result. And it's nothing that's happening in the present moment. In the present moment, everything is fine. And so if you can bring yourself to the present, there's nothing wrong with making preparations for the future and doing things that you need to do. But you don't want to get caught up in stories in your head or thoughts about what might happen, especially fear. Fear is a strong emotion that can lead to very damaging effects, and it, fear has an effect on our immune system. So when you start feeding into fear, when you feed that fear, and I talk about that in terms of um, feeding, your positive and your negative thoughts. But when you feed that fear, you make it stronger. You put more energy into it, and so it gets stronger, and it can run your life. You're no when you put that energy fear, then fear now is running your life. You're not running your life anymore. That fear is running through you and can cause all kinds of harmful reactions. So when practicing mindfulness, you keep yourself in the present moment. You notice these fear thoughts coming through your head, but you let them go. You don't grab onto them. You don't attach yourself to them. It's just a thought. You let that thought pass through your mind like a cloud going through the sky, and you don't get attached to that, um, to the fear. You notice it and you just let it go. So it's to be mindful of the thoughts that are going through your mind, the emotions that are going through, and just watching them without getting involved in them, without judgment. And so when you're able to do that, then you don't get entangled. Getting entangled is karma. When you get entangled into something, you are creating karma. And when you get into like fooling around with a cobra, it's going to come back and bite you. so, so you want to being mindful can help you from getting entangled into things in your mind and your thoughts and your emotions, and to give you space, so you don't get drawn into the drama. You
Mhm.
keep yourself outside of that, keep yourself centered and calm. And that way, you don't create a lot of negative karma.
I've been working on that exact issue just just this whole year, always saying to myself, you get so reactive when whether it's a family member or someone else says something and then I have some crazy reaction to it instead of just listening to that it was words they said.
Right.
And for whatever reason your children always know how to push the buttons in you that are the most pushable buttons that more than any other person. And I think it's really a good, it's I for me, I feel like it's better late than ever if I can try to figure out how to become. Anyway, so that's something I've been working on personally on my own self, which is to be less reactive and to just be more of an observer instead of letting, just because the person maybe dumps their thing out on you doesn't mean you have to take it in. But somehow I always take it in and then all of a sudden I'm a mess. So and I don't want to do that. I want to be more where I don't get my button pushed, whether it's
Right.
a child or a stranger.
Right.
And to be able to somehow stay in a continued positive and peaceful place in myself. And it's a big challenge, but it's one I'm working on because I think it's really important to have for the rest of whatever my future is here, whatever time is left. And also continually reminding yourself to stay in the present moment. And this is hard to do because we're always planning, we're thinking about what just happened, so being in the actual moment itself is always seems a little bit harder than all the other things that go on in our head. I wasn't sure if it was I read it in your book or if I had just heard about that we have 6,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah, I talked about that in my book. It's some of the statistics that are out there on thoughts that go through your head. Yeah, hard to believe so many thoughts that go through our minds a day.
That's incredible. I'm just saying it's incredible. So I
But
want you to get, yeah, let's go back to
let
our
me
mindfulness and the practice.
Yeah, I just want to respond to what, not react to what you said. It is true. It's really good to know, and this is part of self knowledge, in terms of what things, like you just said, what things press your buttons. Get to know what things press your buttons in life, and like you said, your kids really know how to press your buttons, and so their kids can be. I call them negative bodhisattvas. They can be really good at teaching you how to handle um, what pushes your buttons, how your kids, how your parents, how other people in your life may push your buttons. And so you can learn when they're doing that, and then you can try to be more patient and more positive. One of the ways, one interesting story I want to share before we move on is one day, as a illustration of this, is one day I was going out on the highway from the exit ramp. I was going to the Buddhist temple that I am part of the Sangha there. But anyways, I was heading out. I'm on the on ramp and going up, and I'm driving my little Honda Civic. It doesn't have much power, so I'm not going as fast as you might expect that I could go. And the car behind me is getting really torqued because I can see in my rearview mirror the guy is really angry, and he's mad because I'm not going fast enough on the ramp to get going. So, my car will only go so fast. So I'm going up, and the car um, comes alongside of me, and he gives me the finger, and I go, in my head I go, WTF, what's up with that? And usually the way I would react instantly to that, and I would get angry, and I would give it right back to him. But in this case, I became mindful of the situation. I paused, and I realized I saw in me the energy wanting to react, and I calmed myself down, and and I said to myself, I said, this guy's probably just having a bad day. And maybe he's late for an appointment. He just wants to get there. And there's no reason for me to feed into his anger and his frustration, because then I'll just feel angry, and I can just be making the situation worse. It could turn into, at the worst scenario, a road rage situation. So as he was coming by and he gave me the finger, I just waved to him. And it felt so good to be able to do that. And I did it in a really positive manner, where I really hoped that his day would get better, and that things would go better for him. And none of his anger stuck with me. It all just went off my back. And Ajahn Brahm, who's a Buddhist monk, says you need to have a Teflon back. So you let things kind of just flow off your back. You don't take it in, you don't react, and you don't make a lot of further karma for yourself by making that situation worse. The way a person reacts is their karma. The way you react to their actions is your karma. It's best not to let their karma become your karma.
I I have to say, with each guest, I have some kind of funny thing that happens. And in the beginning of my podcast, most of my first 10 or 12 guests are actually friends of mine that I've known for years and years. But now that I'm in I've got over 20 something shows now,
Wow.
I'm having people that I'm only twice a month, but I'm having people that I'm meeting from all over the world that are new to me, that I'm only meeting virtually. I've never met, face to face. And I'm having a wonderful time with this. Sometimes I'm feeling like I hope the audience is getting as much out of it as I am. So I had this guest on, Howard Eisenberg. And before we got to meet on the podcast, because that's often where we first meet, is I kept wanting to call him Howard. And I kept trying to make sure that I kept a note there that I don't call him, that I call him his right name. I mean, Edward was the name I wanted to call him. His name is Howard. So I kept thinking I'm going to confuse this. So before we start, I say to him, I know your name is Howard, but I keep wanting to call you Edward, and it just keeps happening. And I want to make sure I don't make a mistake on the show. And he looked at me and he said, well, actually, it's private information. He said, I've never put it out in the public, but my middle name is Edward. So
That
we
is
had
so
this,
cool.
yeah, it was a really cool connection. So then I had one with you yesterday. So I just want to take 5 minutes to share the story, and then we'll go back to everything. Um, I'm reading your book and I'm enjoying it, and I'm reading it. And because it really is lessons, I read it in 3 different sittings. And I'm getting towards the end or the last third of the book. And as I'm reading it, I take out I've got your book here, and I take out this piece of paper and I write a note on it, and I say, make sure you tell her about the monks, the abbots you met from England in 1989. I mean, I totally forgot about this story.
Wow.
And I write down on this note that you see right here, and I write down, oh yeah, I even remember their names, Achan Cha and Achan Sumedo.
Oh,
And
cool.
I got to share this story about how I met them. So I write it down here and I say, that's going to be my one story for the show.
Cool.
Then I read 5 more pages in your book, and it comes up to this monk whose teacher is Achan Cha. And so I so I make a note on the paper that's saying, I wrote this before I hit page 125. I just have to share this little story because you've had so much involvement with all these Buddhists. And I don't know if there's a teaching or a learning in this, but there was for me. I was asked by a friend who was having Achan Cha and Achan Sumedo come and stay with him for some talks that they were going to give here in California. And so he invited me to come to the talks and asked, would I consider volunteering to cook them their lunch and feed them during the whatever this was, a workshop thing. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And then I went through all this craziness in my head that I'm feeding these Buddhist monks who are used to eating certain kinds of food. And I know that I have to feed it to them in their special one bowl. And they tell me how I have to serve it to them in this certain way. And so it's making me all nervous about what can I feed them? What can I feed them? So I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, well, they're traveling around the country. They're touring around. They must eat rice and vegetables and tofu. Is this what I'm going to make them? And at that time, I was in the catering business. So I was cooking a lot of gourmet food in large quantities. So as I pondered and pondered, all of a sudden, as I'm about to cook, I said to them, you know what? I'm making them lasagna, chocolate truffles. I'm not making anything that's vegan. I mean, it's all healthy food, no meat or any of this, but I'm not going to make the typical rice and veggies thing. So I'm all nervous when I go to serve them the food. And my friend who's hosting them said, the abbots don't say things like, oh, it's delicious, or, because it's just food to them to serve their body, and they're not going to respond that way. They'll say thank you, and that's all you should expect, right? So I'm feeding them the lasagna, and I made them salad, lasagna, and I come to the dessert, which are these chocolate truffles that a very fine chef friend of mine taught me how to make by hand. And I didn't know whether I was allowed to give them something as sensual as my chocolate truffles or what would happen. So I give them the chocolate truffles, and the whole time I'm a nervous wreck. And Achan Cha and Achan Sumedo eat the truffles and have the biggest smile on their face you can imagine. And at the end, he came up to me and he said, I must have that recipe to bring back to the monastery. And he wanted the chocolate truffle recipe, but my friend who was a chef had me sworn to secrecy. Now I'm allowed to share it, but back then it was his favorite, truffle recipe, and I wasn't allowed to share it with anybody. So I felt bad telling him that I had to, I can't give you the recipe because I'm not allowed to because of the person's recipe, it's theirs. And I, leave them with truffles to take for the, the rest of the evening. And my friend goes to the monastery 6 months later, or sometime after their trip is over, traveling through the United States and sharing their amazing wisdom. and he reads their 300-page journal of the
Hmm.
trip through America. And he
Wow.
said, Gail, they wrote about your truffles in the, in the. So this is like a story of where my mind was saying, "Oh no, no, no! This is what you're supposed to give them tofu," and my other self was saying, "No, no, make lasagna and truffles." And it turned out all to be wonderful in the end, all the way to that made it into the journal.
Cool.
So that was my only story I'm sharing for the rest of the show, but I had to share that one because it was 5 pages later. I was call you the second his name popped up. So that's just a sure story I have to share because each guest I have, I feel like I have a story to tell them.
That, that is so cool. That's such a great story.
So I have some more questions here. Unless there's anything about the practice of mindfulness you want to specifically give any specific instruction to our listeners for before we move on to the next question.
Um, no, no, I think we should probably move ahead.
Okay. So um, I wanted to ask about karma yoga. I never heard of that word even. And I was wondering if you could tell us what that is.
Um, Karma yoga. Well, actually, there's different types of yoga. There's bhakti yoga, which is devotional yoga. There's jnana yoga, which is more working with the mind and the intelligence. And so there's different types of yogas. And another yoga is karma yoga. And karma yoga is the yoga of action. And again, with karma yoga, it's learning how to observe your actions without creating negative karma, and also about not only that, it's doing work, doing actions for service for other people, or to God, which would be the highest, or to your idea divinity. Many times when you're on retreat, when I go to a Buddhist retreat or if I go to a yoga retreat, they'll say, "Oh, do you want to do some karma yoga?" And for that, it means that you want to volunteer to do some service around the ashram, to help out in terms of cleaning or in terms of whatever needs done, washing dishes at the ashram. In fact, there's one interesting story that I talk about because I was visiting an ashram in California. It was Sivananda Ashram near Sacramento, and I stayed there for a week. And they were asking people to do karma yoga. Well, I had a friend that I met there, and there was a person going around trying to get people to participate in the karma yoga program, and my friend kept avoiding the person who was going around trying to get people involved. And I talked to my friend. I said, "Why don't you want to volunteer and do some karma yoga?" And he said, "Well, I didn't pay $2,000 to wash dishes." And so I said, "Well, it's more than doing that. It's doing yoga it's doing action and for the sake of other people, to the other people, and not for yourself. It's completely unselfish action." So, and but anyway, it's kind of funny that the director finally tracked him down and got him to do some karma yoga, which was he was washing dishes with me, and after he had done it for a little while, we became friends, and he thought it was pretty cool after he had got a chance to do it, and knowing that his actions were serving others and not doing actions to serve themselves. So karma yoga is doing action to serve other people, and the clincher, with no thought of reward or expectation. So you do an action for service to others, and you don't worry about the results of your actions that you've done. You don't worry if somebody else thinks you did the dishes right, or if you missed a spot, um, or you didn't, clean some clothes right, or whatever. You don't worry about the future. You don't worry about the outcome of the action. You leave the outcome of the action to God, divinity, or what have you. That you don't worry about. You just do the action selflessly for others, and um, and leave the results to um, what have you. And this goes totally against our society and what we've been trained to do. I mean, everywhere growing up, we're taught in school that we want to get good grades for going to school. You want to see results for all the actions you do, and you want them to be really good results. You want them to be positive, and you get a negative result, you get grumpy and you get mad and you get angry because you didn't get the result that you wanted to get, which creates more karma, of course. But so it's totally foreign to most people, the idea of karma yoga, doing action just to as service for other people, or a temple, or to God. That would be the highest thing. It's devoting all your actions to God that you do, and leaving the results of those actions to God. So that's probably the highest aspect of karma yoga. So that's karma yoga.
That's a great description. In reading your book, there were so many people that we both have jointly either done retreats with, or have read their books, or so I felt so it was just felt so comforting to read the names of people I know in your books. Sogyal Rinpoche and the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Right, right.
Did you do retreat with him?
No, I never did a retreat with him. I did a retreat with um, um, a few other Tibetan monks. That one doesn't. I won't tell his name because he doesn't want his name to be known. He lives in Tibet, and at a monastery, and they're very scrutinized over what they do and what they say, and he doesn't want people to know the teachings he's given. And so um, um, I won't say his name, but he's given a lot of teachings at the monastery on Tibetan Buddhism. Um,
Uh, I didn't know what I was getting into when I attended that retreat. It was for the spiritual care of the living and dying, I think was the title.
okay, cool.
And I had never, there was 400 people there. It was in Berkeley or somewhere around there. And after seeing him the first few hours of the day, I felt so drawn to him. I wanted to sit right up near the front on the floor instead of back in the chairs. And he kept being sick, like he had like a cold. So every time he kept wanting to talk, he would start coughing or having to blow his nose. And, he was there to teach, and it was interfering. And when I went home that night, I said to myself, here I am telling another story, sorry.
That's okay.
I said to myself, so how does a person become a student? Like, do you just go, is there an application you fill out, or how do you get to be with one of these teachers and say that this is my teacher and I'm his student? And I couldn't figure out how you do this. But in the night, I decided to do my distant kind of healing that I've always done since I'm a teenager, and send him healing that he should get rid of this cold, because he should be able to teach and not have to be blowing his nose and coughing and be comfortable. So the next day I'm walking there, and again, I'm thinking in my mind, how do you become his student? How do you become his student? Mind you, I haven't asked him a question or anything yet. And I'm sitting in the audience in the front there where I wanted to be close. And he's getting ready to start coughing. And instead of coughing, I start coughing. And I'm like this. And when I finished, he turns to me and said, that is transmission. Now you are my student. And I was like blown away that this, he's answering my question that I've never asked him. And and he's communicating to me without having ever met me, answering what I wanted to know. And he did not cough or choke or anything the whole rest of the talk and the time that he was there. And at the end of the day, because it was a 4-day thing, I think 3 or 4 days, I had to ask him about death, because I felt that someone this spiritual, who's done so much work with, reincarnation and life, and he gave me such an honest human answer that I had even more respect for this man.
Mm.
He said, actually, there are some times in my life when I've been stricken with the fear of death. And it relieved all my feelings of that. There are times in life when I feel like, oh yeah, I know a lot about death. I'll be able to handle this. It's not going to be a big thing. It's only a transition. And then other times where you're stricken with anxiety and it's overwhelming and you think you'll never get to see your children, or what's going to happen when you die. And
Right.
those few words from him alleviated that for me forever. That
Wow.
in the human condition, there's going to be moments where there is fear of death, even from a person who's as spiritually evolved and has done so much work in understanding of reincarnation. So I thought that was a great teaching. And also when he said, and now you're my student, I didn't have to fill out a form or do anything.
That's
And
wonderful.
it was a great experience. So
Yeah, that is a
you've
great
done a lot of
experience.
work. You've done
Yeah,
so much work.
yeah.
And I was wondering if there's any particular books or teachers that you want to share with the listeners if they are just on a beginning path.
Um, yeah, I would for on a beginning path, Thich Nhat Hanh's Miracle of Mindfulness is really good for the average person, so they can learn more about mindfulness and how to, um, you know, handle their emotions, handle their reactions better without creating so much karma for themselves. And creating karma, you create suffering. And so, to way that you can alleviate that suffering is becoming more mindful in terms of how you react and what presses your buttons and um, past karma that you haven't gotten over in life. So many people carry chips on their shoulder from
Mhm.
things that have happened to them in the past. And so the things that they look at are skewed. They're all skewed in terms of what has happened to them in the past. So they see things through that hurt, through that suffering that they went through, and they don't see things clearly. They just see things through the hurt that they're still carrying around. And so it's so helpful to be able to become mindful and learn how to let go of that pain that you may be carrying around, that is it's just not doing you any good in your life, and it's just creating a lot of suffering. And if you can learn how to let that go, um, your life will improve tenfold, just and you'll be free. It's learning how mindful helps you to become free and liberated from certain types of karma that you continue to carry around, and you'll continue to carry it around until you get tired of it and you want to get rid of it. And so mindfulness is a really good way to do that. um, Another good book is Eckhart Tolle's, which everybody's read, The Power of Now. That's a wonderful book in terms of learning how to understand your own psychology and
Mhm.
uh, how that influences how influences your actions and how you treat other people, and learning to be more in the present moment, to learn about what presence is. And there's so many good books. And just practicing my 10 ways to create good karma will help to make your life better. You don't even have to believe in the idea of karma to have those 10 ways to create good karma to help improve your life. Because just doing those things in themselves are psychologically very good for you and will help to alleviate a lot of your suffering, a lot of the past that you carry around with you, and a lot of the future you carry around with you that doesn't even exist, but comes in the forms of worries and anxiety about what may happen in the future. And learning to be more in the present moment, and to be more fully alive with in the present moment, and not be living with such fear and with such anxiety.
These are all tools everybody needs. And sometimes we forget and need reminders. That's what was one of the reasons I also enjoyed your book very much, was because you get sort of stuck back up in your routine of things. And I've done all these different retreats and meditations. And I have to say, silent meditation was the most powerful thing I'd ever done as far as getting in touch with my inner heart and being,
Yeah,
and also of releasing things I can't. In fact, in that time, things you didn't even remember you knew you were carrying would surface up. So you
right.
don't even know that they're hidden there in your body until you still this mind and stop the talking. And that silence is a very powerful teaching, because you have to be, you're with your inner self, and
Correct.
you want to become friends and close to that inner self.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that people don't expect when they get on the spiritual path. They kind of expect that things are going to be wonderful, and that there's going to be angels and all. Yeah, many people think that the spiritual path is an easy path. They get on it thinking that things are going to be wonderful, and that they're going to see wonderful visions, and it's going to improve their lives, and they're going to see angels and all these things. When it's not like that. Getting on the spiritual path is very difficult, because you have to go in to deal with all the problems, all the past karma that you've developed within yourself, and you have to bring it out into the open, into the light. And until you dwell down, like what you were talking about in your silent retreat, until you experience um, those those things that you've kept buried within yourselves, that will prevent you from going anywhere spiritually or go deep in meditation, because you've got all these emotions and all these fears and things. This all has to come to the surface, and mindfulness is a way to help you to do that. But it's also part of the spiritual path, and that's why I named this book "Challenges on the Spiritual Path," because there's so there's so many challenges that I've had to go through in my life, and that most people have too, who are on the spiritual path, that you have to face. And if you're willing to face them and accept them and become aware of them, then you can work with them, and you can change the karma, and you can make it more positive in your life. That karma is like trapped energy. It's just going around in a circle. Like if you look in a stream, sometimes you'll see these little eddies. If you've ever been in a river, you'll see these little eddies with little things floating around in a little current that's caught. And it's like our karmas are like these little eddies inside of us that are trapped energy that's stuck inside of us. Could be fear, could be anxiety, it could be a past event that we haven't gotten over, and it's going around and around. And spiritually we need to look deep within, and to free ourselves from those past karmas, from that trapped energy, to release it, and to be free, and to be happy. And that is what we hope to achieve um,
I,
through our spiritual journey.
I think, wasn't I reading about throwing things out in your house?
Oh,
I think that,
letting go.
yes, I think that's a good thing to share. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, letting go of things in your life that you don't need, and that aren't serving you. Don't Not holding on to things that aren't relevant or helpful in your life. Things that letting go of all old hurts. There, I've seen a lot of people in our sangha, and who hang on to um, old hurts that have happened to them. Somebody did somebody wrong song, and they hold on to them. They can't let go of what somebody might have done to them. And so they never move past it. They never get over it, and they never move on with their life. And so they're kind of stuck on a hold pattern. And and that is one of the things that we need to be able to learn to let go and to move on with our lives and to be
Forgiving.
forgiving definitely. It's amazing what forgiving can do. And it's amazing that how people aren't willing to forgive. One time there was a short story. There was a person in our sangha, and one of the monks was giving a talk and about the self, or about the no self in Buddhism. And anyway, I got kind of into a heated discussion with the monk, and after the sangha was over, after the Dharma talk was over, this woman was so mad at me for conversing with the monk in a heated discussion. She was so angry, and she came up to me and she said, "I don't believe you said those things to the back. I can't believe you." And she was so angry. If she would have had a stick in her hand, she would have hit me in the head with it. And so, I felt so bad. And for days after that Dharma talk, for days she was so angry with me, and she wouldn't talk to me. And so, even though I apologized, I said, "Sorry if you feel that way," but she was still really angry. So I decided to try a lesson in mindfulness, which is to send positive energy, loving energy to someone in it. It's really good to send loving energy to someone who's angry at you to see if it works. So I sent her from my heart. It was true loving energy to this woman, saying that, I forgive you for your outbursts, and I hold no grudge or anything. And I just kept sending her waves of loving kindness to her. And nothing happened for a couple weeks. And I kept doing it on and off throughout for those couple weeks, because I wanted to see what would happen. I really wanted to test it. And on the third week, she came up to me and asked me how I was doing. And that, for her, that's huge. That's and so I said I was doing well, and glad to see that she was able to talk to me. And later, a couple days later, she told me she was going through a lot of problems in her life, and she was going through a lot of anger issues, and that she had taken some of that out on me, even though it didn't have anything to do with her, but for some reason it just triggered anger within her. Mm-hmm. And so a couple days later, she came and she gave me a big hug, and we became good friends. And so it's real interesting. It was just sending her that positive, loving kindness was able to transform. I saw the transformation happen before my eyes. And I invite my listeners to try this experiment when they're having problems with people in their lives, people that they don't get along with, to try sending them loving kindness. This is a loving kindness meditation. And it's hinged on forgiveness, because you have to forgive them for what they might have done to you, and to be able to let go of that. And it's a wonderful exercise to try doing.
Well, I can say that I've done a lot of forgiveness in crazy childhood life that I had. Mm-hmm. And it seems all like that's what's the right and normal thing for me. And it feels like the right way. That's how I've dealt with all the different things that were, my father always kept telling me, and this talking about as a kid, it's your karma. Everything is your karma. So I heard that, I set up the molestations. It was my karma. Okay. and and I just found that I could forgive. And even when I was young, I could forgive. And I've had recently someone approach me and say, do you think you could show me or teach me somehow that I could be like that? He said, because I don't understand how you could forgive your family for the things they did to you. He said, I've been mad at my brother now for 10 years and I cannot forgive him. And I really want to stop this feeling. And he said, and it wasn't anything like what you went through. And I said, well, I found that looking at, like, laughing and looking at the situations and saying, that person might be a victim too. That person might have done these things for whatever things that had happened to them. And that's the way I've always gone through dealing with all those. And I think it's a good, we're not dead yet. You have plenty of time to still work out on some of these relationships or things that you've set up and clear it all. And it only, it's just like when you empty out a closet and you get rid of all these old clothes and they're gone, and they go to someone else, and someone else might find those clothes as the best thing they ever wanted. And they're so happy to get them. So you've done something good for yourself by freeing yourself of these things. And you've done something good for another person because they're receiving the things.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's good if having compassion is one of the ways of forgiving and letting go of things instead of being angry. I mean, what good has that done him? What good of carrying that anger done him?
And also, if you don't get the teaching, there's a teaching in all of these things so that you move on, but you've actually learned something. And so I feel like all the bizarre, unusual things I went through in my childhood all make me who I am today. And people say, well, how did you live through this? Or how did you get through that? And I'm saying, I'm free from those things. I don't feel, those things happened and they occurred and they've had their effect on me in whichever deep ways they have, but I'm not attached to them anymore because of the retreats I've done, because of the meditations I've done. I don't want you to think it happened overnight. There was, 20 years of doing all kinds of different things, just like you've spent a lifetime doing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And just like you said, you're not attached to them anymore. And attachment is what makes attachment is the keystone of karma, becoming attached to things, becoming entangled with things negatively. And so if you're able to let go of those, you're free of those. And you could live life more free. And instead of carrying around all these burdens, these huge burdens with you, you can learn to let go of them and you be much happier and much more free. So there, and under what you said about compassion is really helpful. Tara Brach, who is a great woods.
Okay.
Tara Brach tells a story of a woman going out into the woods, and when she's going out on a trail, all of a sudden she's approached by this angry dog who's barking and barking at her, and she gets so scared and so frightened, and is about to run away from the wolf. Could be a wolf, could be a dog, and is about to, and going to run away in huge fear. And then all of a sudden she sees that this wolf is caught in a trap. Is caught in a steel trap. And so she sees that the reason that the wolf or the dog is so angry is because it's caught in this trap. And karma is like a trap. We're caught in a trap. We're caught in a trap of our own conditioning that holds us, that keeps us from being free. And when she realized that this wolf is caught in a trap, she automatically has compassion, because then you understand why that wolf is angry, because it's caught in a trap, and your heart goes out to it and you have compassion, and you don't feel fearful, you don't feel angry because that wolf is doing that. You understand what's happening. So those are that's why compassion can be so, okay, because we get caught in a trap, and that prevents us from realizing what is happening. Like when a dog or the wolf is caught in a trap, he's hurt and he's feeling angry and he's hostile. And so the woman who saw that had compassion for the wolf, understanding that the reason that the wolf was barking at her and so angry was because it was caught in a trap. And likewise, we get caught in our own traps. We get caught in our own traps of karma, and we don't see a way out of them. And it causes people, that is why sometimes people are so hateful, is because they're caught in this trap of karma. And so if you can have a little compassion and understanding for where they may be coming from, then it can help you to let go of your own anger, which is just making the situation worse. When you do that, it's like we can talk about what's happening.
Gone again. So we just had a few technical audio film difficulties, but everything's back on board. So we've got Jill back here again, and
Yes,
we're going to be winding up our hour now. And
right.
we'd love for Jill to share any last things, thoughts, exercises, or anything she'd like with our listeners about karma.
Sure. One of the things that I like that Jack Cornfield, who's a famous Buddhist practitioner, said, when you can accept and let things go, they no longer have any power over you. They no longer can disturb you, no longer can disturb your mind. You become free. And that's what you want to learn and practice with mindfulness and practice and learning to understand your own karma, learning how to be free of it so you can live a vivacious life and not be held in check, not be controlled by things that have happened in the past, not be controlled by what you're going to worry about in the future, but learn to really enjoy the fully in the present, to really enjoy your life and what you're doing with your life. And so that is one of those great things that you can do. And I just want to end this. There's a couple things. I'll be doing a workshop at we have a thing called Dragon Fest in Colorado. It's going to be in Bailey, Colorado, coming up on August 3rd through August 7th. I'll be doing a couple workshops out there if you'd like to come. It's a great pagan festival. It's a wonderful time, a lot of drumming, a lot of dancing, a lot of fun. So those are great things to come to. And then I'm also doing a special research project with Sean and McNamara. And so he might give more word on that. It's a research psychic project that a bunch of us are working on with him. And so that's going on through the summer. So it'll be interesting. I hope that Sean will share some of the results of this project with you, as he's been on your show and he's a good friend of mine. So I just want to end this with a blessing, a Sanskrit blessing that you can also use as a mantra. And it goes, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. And what that means is, may all beings be at peace, may they be happy, and may they be free. So just wanted to wish that for your practitioners.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you today, even with our little technical glitches in between. We all just have to laugh at them.
We do.
Right. And
listeners create karma.
Internet, sometimes it goes in and out.
Sometimes it does that.
And we have to just go with it and take the flow.
Exactly.
So, I want to tell our listeners, thank you for listening today. We hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to check us out. Remember, we have a website, asmallmediumatlarge.co. On the website, you'll find all the shows that we've done, plus shows that we've been a guest on. There's also information there about an upcoming book I'm working on publishing. So check it out. We look forward to seeing you again. Remember, it's every other week on a Wednesday. And don't forget, share your stories. because stories can heal. Bye.